The monster. Get out of here. A monster. Bastard child. The murderer. Don't you dare even show up here. The freak. Get lost. The demon, little Naruto, has heard these phrases almost since his birth. All people hated it simply because it contained the nine-tailed one that destroyed Konoha 4 years ago. But was this little boy with eyes as blue as the sky to blame for this? Not at all. But will people really understand? They always choose an object of ridicule or a person to blame. Baby Naruto has now come to another store to try to buy pencils or paints with brushes. The boy came before everyone else when the shop had just opened, so as not to stumble upon ridicule and humiliation. The yellow-haired top of her head poked out from behind the table, standing on tiptoes, and looked at the man who was laying out the products. The boy smiled in such a bright childish hope and asked, "I'm sorry, uncle. I would like to buy paints with brushes or colored pencils from you. I have money, too." The boy pulled out a whole bunch of coins from the pocket of his shorts and put them on the table. The man was standing with his back at that moment and therefore was glad that a buyer came to him so early. The seller just turned around, intending to kindly offer the little buyer a choice of all his paints and brushes, but as soon as he saw Naruto's familiar face, his face was distorted by a grimace of contempt and hatred. "What do you want here, you bastard? Get out of here and get your money." The man threw money in the boy's face, brushing them off the table, and pushed him away from the shop by the shoulder. Naruto looked at him in fright. He still could not understand such an attitude towards himself and such rudeness. "Get out now. Take these pencils already and don't you dare come back," the man said, throwing a package of paints and pencils at the child. The paints stained the boy's face and t-shirt, and it also hurt a little because he fell to the ground. "I'm sorry," Naruto apologized and took the pencils, trying to escape faster and hide from the seller's eyes. The boy ran away to his house and locked the doors, sliding down the wall and closing his eyes so as not to cry. After all, he promised himself not to do this. He promised himself to be strong. Naruto exhaled and stood up, clutching a pack of pencils to his chest. He went to the table and put the box on it, then ran to the bedside table and took out a piece of paper. Climbing onto a chair, the boy opened a package of pencils and carefully laid them on the table, stroking each with his fingers and as if afraid to touch them. He ran his hand over the white paper and smiled, looking at the piece of paper. He was immediately overcome with happiness. Naruto grabbed a pencil and began to draw. Here on a white sheet of paper appeared inept lines that resembled a man, a round head, 2 fat dots in the form of eyes, a curved arc of a smile, short and sticking out in all directions hair, then a stick down, 2 sticks to the left, 2 sticks to the right. Here are the arms and legs ready, on top of this strange and very large shorts, as well as a t-shirt. Following the man, female lines appeared on the sheet about 15 centimeters from him. The same head and dots instead of eyes, but instead of shorts and a t-shirt there was a dress, from which 2 sticks legs then stuck out. Now the most important thing was, another man appeared on the paper, only a small one, and he was holding a man and a woman by the hand. If Naruto could write, then over the head of a man he would write Dad, and over the head of a woman Mom. Well, maybe over his head he would write I or Naruto. So that the leaf was not completely empty, Naruto drew another ridiculous sun and grass, as well as a house in the right corner. He always dreamed of a family and his own home. The boy joyfully looked at his drawing and then pressed it to his chest, smiling. But the next minute his smile trembled and fell from his face. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, because all the bad memories flew before his eyes like a whirlwind. He tried to hold back the tears, but they still flowed from the corners of his eyes down his cheeks. And then the first sobs were heard. His hands tightened on the drawing, forcing it to crumple and even tear in one place. When the boy noticed this, he put the piece of paper on the table in a panic and began trying to smooth it out with his hands. "Mom, Dad, forgive me, excuse me," he whispered, and tears dripped onto the paper, as if trying to spoil it even more. The thought flashed through my head that no one needed him at all and it would be better if he simply did not exist. The boy grabbed the drawing from the table and ran out of the room, running away from home, then from the streets of this village. Tears blurred his eyes, and he almost could not see where he was running, so first he fell into a mud puddle, tripped over a stone, and then broke his knees on the rough ground. But despite this, Naruto stubbornly continued to run, clutching the drawing to himself. Naruto ran a little more and stumbled for the last time, tumbling down a small cliff and getting all dirty in the mud even more. The boy did not get up for a long time after that, just lay there and pressed the drawing to himself, trying to restrain sobs. Finally, the tears just dried up, and the child got up, starting to walk just wherever his eyes look. Soon the boy was completely tired and just sat down near the tree, pressing his back against its trunk. Only now Naruto tore off a crumpled, torn and mud-stained drawing from his chest. Because of this, he wanted to cry again, but there was simply nothing left. The boy smoothed out the drawing as much as possible and just lay down next to it, curling up and hugging the already more or less smooth sheet to himself. Sleep overcame him very quickly. Naruto was very tired, and even more so such an emotional outburst also led to fatigue and drowsiness. Two men were making their way through the forest, well, more precisely, they were just walking. They were wearing cloaks with red clouds and hats that hid their faces. There were small bells on the hats, which shuddered and made a thin ringing sound with each step of the owner. We could have gone in a different direction and reached the lair faster. He grumbled, rolling his eyes at Kisame, adjusting his sword and hugging him more comfortably. "I think I made it clear that I don't want to go through Konoha." Itachi answered a little dryly, unbuttoning the first buttons of his raincoat and putting his hand on it, blinking tiredly. "He's been getting pretty tired lately." Kisame sighed at this once again and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Let's make a halt, it's already getting dark anyway." Itachi nodded at this suggestion. They decided to walk a little more and then have a rest. After walking about 2 more kilometers, they stopped at the edge of the forest, where there was a small river and a small cliff nearby. "I'm going to gather some branches," Itachi said, walking away towards the cliff, without even giving his partner an answer. The guy was walking through the forest and collecting twigs with brushwood, but suddenly his sharp eye caught some strange golden pile of bushes, or something else strange. As he got closer, he realized that it was a child. For a member of the Akatsuki, it was amazing that this child was in the forest, quite far from Konoha and completely alone. The guy sat down next to the baby and saw the drawing, which was so desperately pressed to his chest. Elegant fingers slid to him and pulled the drawing out of his hand, and his eyes began to examine it. Something ached painfully in his heart. It seems that he always forbade this feeling to come to life, but looking at this drawing, moments with his parents appeared before his eyes, happy moments stained with their blood. And baby Sasuke, who doesn't understand at all what's going on and why Itachi is acting so cruelly. The guy sighs and, unable to restrain himself, strokes the boy's golden hair, smiling easily. It seems that everything has been decided for him for a long time, so the hand finally unbuttons the cloak and wraps Naruto in it so that the baby does not freeze. Naruto begins to toss slightly and then eventually presses his nose to the collar of his raincoat, mumbling something. Uchiha smiles slightly and, throwing the brushwood back, takes the child in her arms and takes him away towards the place where they decided to make a bed for the night. When Itachi came back, Kisame had already laid out all the things and prepared sleeping places for them. When he saw something wrapped in a raincoat and did not see the brushwood, because he hid behind the guy's back, the man's eyebrow shot up in question. "What's that?" he asked, looking straight at the shinobi. Itachi just laid the bundle on his sleeping place and covered it with a blanket on top. Then he threw off the brushwood from his shoulder and laid it out to set it on fire. Using the fire technique, I quickly lit it and sat down to warm up. What is it? Persistently repeated his question to Kisame, looking at his partner and then slightly nervously at the cloak. A boy. After such a statement, Hoshigaki's second eyebrow rose on his forehead, and his eye twitched slightly. Itachi, are you out of your mind? What does a boy mean? He asked, looking now at the cloak, then at the shinobi and even starting to get nervous somehow. Itachi sighed and threw a stick into the fire. Calm down, it's just a kid. I'll take him with me. Our ranks are already thinning, so it will be possible to grow another member of the Akatsuki. I'll take care of his upbringing myself. He answered, looking at his sleeping place, where the baby began to toss and turn. In fact, it was just an excuse, and an attempt to convince a partner that it was necessary to take this child. After this statement, Kisame was silent for a long time, as if thinking over the options for the development of events, and then nodded. Okay, but you're going to babysit him yourself, I don't need such a gift. He said it rather rudely, it was just in his nature and Itachi was used to it. The bundle began to stir again and, as a result, first a golden crown appeared from under the cloak and blanket, and then everything else. The blue sleepy eyes looked very interested. Who are you? He asked, thinking that he had wandered into someone's territory and was about to be scolded, so he already tensed up and prepared for punishment. But instead, he noticed a strange man's hand with a red ring, and a musabi asterisk in it. Kisame just rolled his eyes at this and also began to eat. Is it true for me? Naruto asked, looking at the hand and still hesitating to take it. Itachi nodded at this and after that the boy took the food, starting to eat. Uchiha got up and went to the river, took off his t-shirt, remaining only in a mesh jacket. I soaked the shirt in the rivers and squeezed it out, only then returning back. He squatted down beside the boy and began to wipe the dirt from his face and hands. When we come, here he hesitated, did not know whether to say, home, or, to the lair, but then decided to say the first thing, home, then you can sleep properly and take a shower. Naruto was so surprised that he almost choked on Omusabi, looking with blue eyes at the guy. Home? You won't say I'm a monster? Will you take me home? Kisame muttered something at this, but for this he only received a reproachful look from his partner. Itachi smiled slightly at Naru and said, why would I call you a monster? You have a name, don't you? What's your name? Yes, I'll take you home, you're all alone. Then he thought that he shouldn't have said that last sentence. And it turned out to be right. Naruto slightly drooped, looking at the drawing that lay next to him, but then he sniffed and smiled, because he promised himself not to cry anymore. Naruto Uzumaki, the boy held out his hand to the elder to shake it. When Itachi heard the name, he immediately understood why this child was called a monster. He sighed and then shook the blue-eyed man's hand. Itachi Uchiha. Naruto was so surprised, looking at the elder, that he almost dropped his dinner. He immediately roused himself and asked, are you Sasuke's brother? Kisame whistled from this, expecting Itachi's anger, but Shinobi only nodded at this, slightly awkwardly adjusting a lock of hair. The problem was that he didn't know how much Sasuke could tell about him, and he didn't want to scare little Naruto at all. Great, maybe, although Sasuke is always rude when asked about his brother. And your house in Konoha? I wouldn't want to go back there. As a result, the child answered and Itachi stood up, stroking his hair, looking at the obviously angry Kisame and drilling him with his gaze. They say, behave normally. No, my house is far from here, so you don't have to worry. Will you come with me and Kisame? Itachi asked, looking at the child already, his eyes were softer now than when he looked at his partner. I'm going. Is it really possible? Itachi only nodded at this, and the child ran up to him, tripping, almost hitting the ground, and hugged the older shinobi by the hips. Well, what he was getting at. Thank you very much. Itachi didn't expect this and was surprised at first, but then he just patted Naruto on the head. Kisame rolled his eyes once again, so much so that it seemed they would remain like that forever and he would see only his brain for the rest of his life. And who is this shark uncle? But no, because of such a cheeky phrase, Kisame's eyes came back and one even twitched. He just wanted to snap back, but Itachi ordered him to be silent with a gesture. Therefore, the shark uncle could only continue to chew his dinner. This is Kisame Hoshigaki, you better not call him that. Okay, good. Naruto nodded and finally got rid of the older shinobi, starting to finish his portion of dinner. At this time, Itachi took his raincoat and comfortably rearranged the sleeping place to fit on it together with the boy. When everything was ready, it was already dark enough and only the firelight illuminated the clearing. Naruto was sitting and nodding off, starting to fall asleep, so Itachi put him to bed, and he sat down next to Kisame, leaning against the trunk of a tree. After all, do you miss Sasuke a lot? Have you decided to find a replacement for him? Said Kisame because of what Itachi was very tense and twitched. I took him away because he was lying alone in the woods with a picture of a family. Perhaps I will be able to give him something like a family that I have deprived myself of. This is the boy in whom the fourth imprisoned the nine-tailed. Therefore, it is clear why he does not want to return to the village, there he is simply being bullied. Itachi answered, covering his eyes and pressing the back of his head against the post, mumbling slightly. I see. But remember, if he calls me shark uncle again, I'll rip his tongue off. Kisame said as seriously as possible, but Itachi just smiled from that, getting up and going to his sleeping place. Good night, Kisame. Good night, Itachi. Shinobi answered this by remaining sitting by the tree, watching Itachi lie down next to the boy. Itachi was very tired lately, so his eyes almost immediately closed and he fell asleep, plunging into a long-awaited dream. It took about a week of their journey together. Kisame snapped and muttered at Naruto all the time, and Itachi lectured him about the treatment of children for this. Therefore, by the end of the week, the older man simply remained silent, even when Naruto took him by the hand or just pestered him with questions. I just had to come to terms with the fact that now Itachi is our umami. The trio soon came to a mountain river, where it was suspiciously quiet, but the wall opposite was suspiciously smooth. Can we cross this river? Naruto asked, looking at Itachi and holding his hand. The older man nodded at this and looked at Kisame, who already had a wrinkle on his forehead due to a week-long frown. Take him in your arms, he doesn't know how to control his chakra yet. Itachi asked, releasing the boy's hand and stepping onto the river, walking along it closer to the wall. Itachi? What the hell? This is your child, not mine, but there was no way out, I had to take the boy in my arms. Well, more precisely, the man just threw him on his back and told him to hold him by the neck, and he wrapped his arms around the boy's legs. Naruto was surprised to see two Akatsuki members walking on water. Can I do that? He asked, looking at Itachi. There was such hope and interest in the boy's eyes that they even shone with some kind of excitement. You can, only a little later, grow up first, replied Uchiha and turned to the wall, folding his hands in some seals and then pressing his right palm against the wall. Immediately, everything shook and the wall began to rise up. Naruto opened his mouth in surprise, watching all this. Soon the wall rose completely, and the trio entered the cave. Kisame, as soon as they stepped on a hard surface, sat down so that Naruto got off him, starting to grumble even more because of the crunch in his knees. As it turned out, all the Akatsuki were already in place, so all eyes fell on those who came. The boy even got scared somehow and hid behind Itachi's leg, looking at everyone. Deidara was the first to speak, jumping off the stone. "Itachi-san, who is this?" he asked, looking at the boy, while the others were just silent. Itachi looked at Naruto and pushed him by the shoulder, saying, "Don't be shy and introduce yourself." Blue eyes darted in a kind of panic, but then the boy took a bold step forward and smiled. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Glad to meet you," he said, and then for some reason bowed, looking at everyone and waiting for a reaction. All the members of the Akatsuki were very surprised. One Toby laughed and jumped up to the boy, poking him in the nose. Boop. After that, he laughed out loud and looked at Itachi. "Someone decided to become a mom, right, Itachi-senpai?" Toby was rewarded with only an icy look at this phrase, which made the first one's heart skip a beat, and he laughed nervously. "I'm Toby." In the end, he said, extending his hand to the boy and shaking it. Naruto smiled at him and repeated again that he was very glad to meet him. Pain looked at all this and then sighed heavily. He nodded Itachi aside, as if to say, "Let's go, let's talk." The owner of the Sharingan immediately went towards Pain, hiding in the shadows. Naruto stayed with Kisame, but he also left him, going to the side to complain to Kakuzu. Toby just wanted to ask Naruto something, how to get ahead of Deidara. "I take it you're a new member of Akatsuki?" He laughed jokingly, holding out a bird on the boy's hand, which as soon as it touched Naruto's hand came to life and made the boy scared. "Don't be afraid, she won't hurt you." "Thank you very much," Naruto answered, starting to examine the bird and stroke it on the head. Then only he noticed the mouths on Deidara's hands and was surprised. But instead of asking why they were there, the young Uzumaki asked the question differently. "Do you feed these mouths too?" Toby rolled on the floor with laughter, literally starting to choke and twitch his arms. After looking at him, Deidara rolled his eyes, and only smiled at the blue-eyed one. "No, I don't feed them, they help me make the same birds." "Great, I'd like that too. But first Itachi-san promised to teach me how to walk on water, only I need to grow up a little." Deidara laughed and patted the kid on the head. Then he turned to Kakuzu, to whom Kisame complained and said, "It seems that you will have to sew a raincoat for our new participant as well." Kakuzu and Kisame simultaneously rolled their eyes, but the former eventually agreed. So soon Naruto will have his own miniature Akatsuki cloak. So, following Deidara, all Akatsuki participants began to approach Naruto and gradually get acquainted. Most of all Naruto liked Deidara with his clay animals, Uncle Haiden shouting and saying various strange and misunderstood words, and, of course, the sweet girl Konan with her paper boats, which she has already promised to launch together with Naruto. As it turned out, the Akatsukis were not at all as scary and terrible as they were said about them. And this little boy made Shinobi, whom the whole world is afraid of, just have fun and have fun with him. While everyone was talking to Naruto and entertaining him, a dialogue between Pain and Itachi began in the far corner of the cave. "You brought a child with you. Amazing, Itachi." "Very and." Pain began, leaning against the cold wall and looking at the interlocutor. Itachi looked up and sighed. He was all alone and probably would have died because he ran away from the village. "Is it your business, Itachi? Since when do you care so much about someone other than yourself?" Itachi clenched his teeth and it was heard that they creaked. "That's what I wanted to say, since birth." But then he just answered the same thing as Kisame. "Our ranks are thinning and we need new people. What's wrong with raising this boy in our organization and using him?" Pain smiled. He read people perfectly and understood that this was not what moved Itachi at all. So he just nodded and patted him on the shoulder. Okay, Itachi, you're right, let him stay. After that, the man went into the darkness and disappeared altogether. Pain never stayed long at the general training camp and tried to leave faster. Itachi sighed and followed Naruto. He was surprised that almost everyone except Kisame crowded around the boy, although even he watched with interest. As it turned out, Obito got Kakuzu with his whining and he made a cloak for Naruto right now, although it turned out to be a little too big, so the hands were almost invisible, only the fingertips, well, 30 centimeters dragged on the floor. He's cute, Haiden said, for which he immediately received a stern look from Itachi and Kakuzu's catchphrase, "Shut up, Haiden." When the owner of the Sharingan approached, everyone parted so that the mommy could look at her child. Naruto stood and scratched his eyes with the sleeve of his raincoat and then yawned. The baby was washed. In this raincoat, he looked insanely cute and funny. So Itachi had to hide his smile in the collar of his raincoat. "Itachi-san, do you like it?" Naruto asked, looking at the elder with a radiant but tired smile. Itachi walked up to him and picked him up in his arms, straightening his collar. "Of course I like it, now you're also a member of the Akatsuki." But no one cancelled the daytime nap. He said, carrying the boy away from the general crowd to put him to bed. Tobi immediately became indignant, but he got a big slap on the head from Deidara. "What did I do wrong again, Deidara-senpai?" He made a more tearful intonation, hugging Shinobi by the hand and hanging on to him. Deidara just rolled his eyes, trying to separate him from himself. As a result, Tobi got another slap on the head, stronger than before. Itachi laid out 2 mattresses in the corner of the cave so that the younger one would not catch a cold in the kidneys due to the cold floor of the cave. Naruto was standing next to Itachi all this time, holding his cloak and yawning. "Itachi-san, I will become as strong as you." Yawning, the kid said and rubbed his eyes again. Itachi turned to him and while no one saw him, he smiled slightly, stroking Naruto's head. "Okay, absolutely." After that, he tried to take off his raincoat, but Naruto clung to him tightly. "I don't want to take pictures, I like to walk just like Itachi-san." "Well, you'll take it off only while you're sleeping, no one will take it away." Itachi tried to convince him, but it was useless. Naruto was tightly clutching his cloak, so the elder had to put the child in it. Less than 5 minutes later, the golden crown was already snuffling under the blanket, hugging Itachi's hand. "Itachi's mom." Tobi whispered in his ear and then began to run away faster so as not to be hit. Itachi just threw a stone at the stupid shinobi and hit just on the legs. Tobi slumped to the floor and sprawled on it, starting to whimper jokingly and complain to Sasori standing next to him about the unfair treatment of himself and the whole injustice of life in general. To Itachi, who watched so that no one disturbed the sleep of the little Uzumaki and sometimes looked menacingly at Haiden, who was screaming at the top of his voice about the value of his religion, Konan came up and sat down next to him, putting a paper boat next to Naruto's sleeping place. "Still, you love children very much, Itachi." Smiling, she said, looking at Naruto and how cute he was snuffling and frowning his eyebrows in his sleep. Itachi sighed, looking first at Konan, then at Naruto. "Probably, yes, it can't be taken away," he said, slightly closing his eyes from fatigue. Konan decided not to bother him anymore. It was obvious that Itachi was not in the mood for a conversation. "We'll all take care of him, too." The girl left after pain and everything seemed to finally quiet down, but it wasn't there. "Don't get up," Haiden shouted because of something. And immediately after him, at least 3 members of the Akatsuki flew in. "Shut up, Haiden, only this has already been said in a loud whisper, otherwise Itachi would have just killed everyone with his menacing gaze." Weeks passed, followed by months. After a month and a year had already passed, Naruto gradually adapted to frequent travel and rare gatherings, in general, so to speak, the house. The kid really liked it when everyone from Akatsuki got together. He liked spending time with him. In addition, Itachi, who saw great potential in the boy, began to teach him the most basic things on the sly. Naruto didn't want to at first and kept asking the elder to teach him how to walk on water. Itachi had to explain to the little shinobi larva for an hour that in order to learn this, you first need to learn all the basic things. So, little Naruto started from scratch. Like all children, he learned to hold and throw kunai and shuriken correctly, taught to focus the chakra in different parts of the body, developed all the senses to the maximum. Well, he tried, at least. Itachi was happy every time Uzumaki did something, but he didn't show it in any way, so as not to spoil. Now the trio was returning from a very important mission and Naruto decided to try to show off to Itachi and at least just stand on the water. Itachi-san, look, he shouted, running into the water and concentrating hard to stay on the water. But in the end it didn't work out, and the boy just fell into the water, then surfacing with a water lily on his head. Kisame laughed and, waving his hand, poured some water on Naruto's head and pretended that he had nothing to do with it. Now you have to change clothes and dry things. Itachi sighed. Although it wasn't a big problem, they still wanted to make a stop, but if Naruto hadn't messed around, they would have done it a little later. So what? But I took 2 whole steps, Naruto said, removing the water lily from his hair and smiling radiantly. Kisame muttered, throwing the sword at the tree. Close your jaws, or we'll go blind. Rolling his eyes, he said, starting to part with a sleeping place. BBB, close your jaws. Naruto mimicked him and stuck out his tongue, immediately afterwards, jumping up and getting ready to run away. Oh, you miserable shinobi larva. Because of Itachi, he now restrained himself in bold and rude statements. Naruto showed him his tongue again and just stepped onto the shore, as the water pulled him back and slightly flooded him so as not to run amok. Itachi watched this, hiding a slight smile in the collar of his raincoat. Like 2 small children. He thought as he left to gather twigs to make a fire. Naruto finally got out of the water for the 3rd time and took off his wet clothes, hanging them on the branches. Itachi had already gathered branches and built a fire, so that the younger one could warm up. Just try to get sick after that. Itachi said, throwing a small piece of cloth similar to a towel over the shoulders of his ward. Naruto just smiled at this and began to eat. When all 3 had had dinner, they went to bed. Now little Uzumaki was sleeping on a separate mattress so as not to embarrass Itachi. So that he never rolled away at night, he slept between 2 older shinobi. Sometimes the blue-eyed man slept quite calmly, just quietly snoring and hugging the edge of the blanket, and sometimes it seemed that in a dream he was simultaneously fighting with someone, juggling and running a marathon. The latter actually reflected on his actions in reality and was happening at the moment. Naruto turned over a couple of times and mumbled something, rested and kicked Kisame right in the stomach, forcing the elder to open his eyes and growl. In order not to run into Itachi's reproaches, Kisame simply shifted Naruto closer to the owner of the Sharingan and began to sleep further. But the torment did not end there. Naruto rolled over again a couple of times and kicked Kisame in the back several times, and then also took his blanket, covering himself with it. If Hoshigaki were a teapot, he would probably be boiling by now. The man got up, took his blanket back and threw his blanket at Naruto, which was lying at the boy's feet, and lay down further away, muttering something like a puffer fish that was pulled out of the water. The rest of the night Kisame never managed to sleep, because of Naruto, sleep left him along with Morpheus, so the man just lay there, clutching a blanket in his hands and glaring at Naruto. He also almost gnashed his shark teeth, and the wrinkle on his forehead became even more noticeable. The first, or rather the second, if you count Kisame. Itachi opened his eyes. The guy sat down and rubbed the bridge of his nose, yawning, and then starting to put his hair in order. Why the hell didn't he kick you once during the night, and I couldn't sleep because of this fool, Kisame said, staring at Itachi. The younger shinobi just sighed and straightened a strand of hair. Treat it more leniently, that's all. Itachi got up and took off his dark blue sweatshirt, remaining only in a mesh one, and went to the river, washing his eyes and then looking at his reflection. We were beaten for this. Kisame growled, still looking at Itachi point blank. The owner of the dark deep eyes turned and looked at the former shinobi of the village of Mist. Hit him, can you? Itachi knew perfectly well that Kisame would not do this, because the second understood that this boy was dear to Uchiha. Do you think I won't hit you? The man snorted and stood up, approaching Naruto and just wanted to kick him with his foot, as something stopped him. He spent a whole year with this boy and endured everything. But there were not only annoying moments, he was also happy for Naruto when he threw his first kunai correctly, and when he got drunk, he generally had fun with this child. It's just that Kisame considered himself a monster, so he thought it was his duty to hide all feelings and emotions except anger. Kisame stopped and sighed, putting his foot in place. Itachi approached him and looked at the sleeping Naruto, and then into the eyes of his partner, where confusion was clearly now being read. We are not monsters, Kisame, we are people. After that, he patted the elder shinobi on the shoulder and left to pack his sleeping place and things. Kisame sighed and lowered his eyes, and then ruffled the hair on Naruto's head and easily pushed the boy in the shoulder. Come on, shinobi larva, get up already. He muttered and then immediately walked away, starting to pack his things. Itachi smiled a little at this, because he knew that Kisame also had a piece of something good. Soon they came to that mountain river and the rock near it again. Naruto this time jumped on Hoshigaki's back himself and smiled, waiting for Itachi to open the passage. The shinobi of the mist grumbled because of this, holding the robber so that he would not fall into the water. The owner of the Sharingan quickly opened the passage so as not to make Kisame nervous, and they went inside. Hiden! Naruto shouted, literally jumping over Kisame's head and running to the religious shinobi, jumping on his neck. Still, he hung on Hiden the most, and he was the only one to whom Naruto addressed simply by name. Fuck you. Naruto, how you've grown up. The man patted the guy on the head, lighting up with his trademark smile. Kakuzu rolled his eyes, but Itachi just pierced Hiden with his gaze. How many times has he already asked not to swear in front of the child, all to no avail, like peas against the wall. Although that's why he's Hiden. Deidara-senpai, I'm so sad, whimper nobody greets me like that. Deidara-senpai, can I come to your pens? Toby whimpered, hugging his knees and rocking back and forth, creating a very pitiful look. Deidara's eyebrow flew up to her forehead, hit a wrinkle and dropped back down. The next second Toby got a slap on the head and was already lying on the floor, hugging Deidara by the legs. Naruto-kun. Deidara-senpai doesn't like me, why nobody loves me. Deidara simply resigned himself to the fact that his legs would not let go and simply closed the channels of vital energy by connecting the index finger and thumb of his right hand, and making circular movements with them at the forehead. Hiden, you promised to tell about your religion. Naruto reminded, getting off the elder and folding his arms on his chest. Hiden began to smile horribly nervously joyfully and was just about to start talking when Kakuzu hit his partner on the head. Sorry, Naruto, Hiden is very busy right now and he can't do it. After that, Kakuzu dragged the swearing Hiden aside to explain that such a child should not be told. Itachi exhaled. In fact, he was very worried that his ward would not be accepted, but it turns out that Naruto was a kind of soul of their company and helped to relax after difficult tasks. Ah! Deidara-senpai, it hurts, Toby screamed because he was hit between the legs and rolled on the floor, holding on to this place. Don't grab my legs, you idiot, Deidara muttered, folding his arms on his chest and legs in a lotus position so that he would not be touched for sure. Naruto carefully crept up behind Deidara and then abruptly jumped out from behind the stone, shouting, "Art is an explosion." Boom! Deidara stretched out in a smile and immediately began to look for Sasori with his eyes. The former sand shinobi was without his protective doll for the first time and was fixing something in the corner. Sasori, I won. Did you hear what Naruto-kun said? Sasori just sighed at this, continuing to repair his doll and not paying attention to the general hype. He probably, like Pain, liked silence more and kept himself at arm's length from Naruto. Naruto-kun. Deidara-senpai is so angry, he hits Toby. Toby whimpered, hugging Naruto's leg, still lying on the cold floor of the cave. Itachi-san says that if you get a kidney cold lying on the floor, get up. He said, holding out his hand to get Toby up quickly. Deidara smiled slightly at this phrase, although Naruto was close to everyone, but Itachi was the center of his small and still very undeveloped and unexplored universe. Itachi walked up to the cave wall and leaned against it, closing his eyes and covering them with his hand. They started to get sick again, yet the Sharingan, despite all its enormous strength, also carries severe injuries. Kisame approached him from behind and turned him around, handing him a sleeping bag. Go ahead, just lie down with your eyes closed or better sleep at all. I'll keep an eye on Naruto, don't worry. Although he has so many nannies here. Shinobi said and immediately left, well, he does not know how to take care. Itachi smiled and followed his partner's advice. At first he just lay there, and then he fell asleep with his back to the wall and clutching the blanket to him. The first stormy moments of the long-awaited meeting have passed. Shinobi were sitting in a mug by the fire, well, not everyone, only Toby, Deidara, Haiden and Kakuzu. Pain and Konan weren't there at all yet, and Kisame was sitting apart, lost in his thoughts. Why do you all have bandages, but I don't? The boy asked, looking at the circle around him and eating another spoonful of delicious rice. Everyone even somehow wondered what to say to Naruto. When you learn to walk on water, Itachi-san will give you such a bandage, only with a leaf symbol. Deidara was the first to think of answering this way, tapping his bandage with his fingernail. Naruto immediately smiled and beamed with joy. Then I'll do it as soon as possible. He declared, even starting to eat faster somehow, as if it could help him learn to walk on water faster. Deidara-senpai, and I also want a bandage. I can walk on water. Well, please, please, Toby hugged Deidara's hand, who seemed to be just boiling. He answered through gnashing of teeth, if you don't come off now, I'll strangle you with this bandage. Then he smiled kindly, looking at how Naruto was eating his food. Toby, on the other hand, drooped theatrically, there were not enough ears to press them to his head. That's how it always is, you reach out to a person, but it's like this with you. Okay, I get it. I'm just a homeless philosopher, I'm just an unhappy creator. After that, he got up and smoothly, pressing on pity, retired to the side of the right wall and sat down there on a stone. Deidara sighed heavily, but Haiden began to laugh unrealistically from this. I'll probably go apologize, or I'll really be offended. Shinobi said and walked away towards Toby. As many could see, he was immediately hugged and something began to cheerfully squeal. Deidara just stood there silently, starting to boil again. Naruto ate and took one of the onigiri to take Itachi, but when he came up, he noticed that the man was sleeping. Therefore, I quietly sat down next to him, holding onigiri in my hands, so that when the elder wakes up, I immediately offer him something to eat. Kisame watched this for a long time, but then only cursed, averting his eyes. Soon the boy dozed off, still holding onigiri in his hands. Conan carefully laid him next to Itachi and threw a blanket over him. So they slept, Naruto, Itachi, and between them onigiri with algae. The most favorite for Itachi-san in the Hokage's office. As usual, there were many books, various documents and other necessary things by the type of ink and brushes, as well as untouched sheets of paper. From the large windows there was a view of most of Konoha, which was insanely beautiful. The rays of the sun slipped through the windows and fell everywhere, on sheets of paper, walls, floor, books and the Hokage himself, who was sitting and filling out documents. Suddenly, another large shadow of a man who had just appeared was thrown on the wall. Mr. Hokage, I report that Naruto Uzumaki was recently seen together with 2 members of the Akatsuki. According to our data, it was Sasuke's brother, Itachi Uchiha. And his partner is a certain Kisame Hoshigaki. He was a member of the 7 Mist Swordsmen. He told Umbu, looking at Hiruzen, who immediately frowned. After all, he promised Minato to take care of Naruto, and in the end he lost the boy. Do you know their approximate location? He asked, getting up from his chair and going to the window, looking at his village. Yes. Hiruzen's eyebrows formed a house, and the old man rubbed the bridge of his nose. Then he turned to the Umbu member, looking stern and focused. Assemble a team of 10 members of the Umbu and go in search of Naruto. We have to bring him back, said Hokage, to which the Umbu member nodded, immediately evaporating. The old man went to the window and pressed his palm against it, looking at the bright sun. I'm sorry, Minato. He sighed, hitting the glass and clenching his hand into a fist. The pain and guilt for an unfettered promise is one of the strongest. The next morning Naruto jumped up at the crack of dawn and began to think what to do. At first, he decided that it was his duty to protect Itachi's sleep, but he quickly got tired of it. He was already thinking of dying of boredom and starting to build a pyramid out of pebbles, when he suddenly noticed that Kisame had also woken up and was folding his so-called bed. The restless boy approached Kisame and imperceptibly poked him in the side with his finger. The man jerked and hissed, looking at the limitless. What the hell are you doing? What do you want? Go ahead, here get Tobi or Deidara. The man muttered in a whisper, continuing to pack his things. Naruto giggled and poked him with his finger again. What the hell do you want from me? He said in a loud whisper, looking at Naruto and already ready to reflect another poke. You promised to go fishing with me. Let's go now, it bites well in the morning. Naruto said, smiling happily. This caused Kisame's eyebrow to hit a wrinkle, which, by the way, was also formed due to Naruto, and then fall back down. When did I say that? Stop lying. He waved his hand to Kisame, continuing to pack his things. Although everything was already almost packed, he was probably trying to show that he was busy so that they would get behind him faster. When I got drunk about 3 months ago. You said back then that Itachi-san and I would be witnesses at your wedding. Well, he certainly invented the latter, but Kisame's eye twitched again. The man snorted, folding his arms over his chest. To be ready in 2 minutes. Let's go fishing with you. After that, the man went to dig out fishing rods somewhere in the depths of the cave. They even turned out to be quite good. Naruto, however, joyfully gathered and even managed to eat. Therefore, exactly 2 minutes later, he was already in full dress at the exit of the cave. Kisame approached him and threw a fishing rod, then opening the secret passage as quietly as possible and leaving the cave. If you shout too loudly, you'll scare all the fish away from me. And if you scare her away, you'll feed them. Is that clear? He said, looking at the younger one and then adjusting the sword behind his back. Naruto just smiled and nodded at this. They decided not to go too far. Well, more precisely, Kisame decided, he didn't want to drag 1,000,000 kilometers from the cave for a couple of fish and fun for this weirdo. Soon they came to the river, where they decided to start fishing. They had tortillas, so they put small rolled lumps on hooks and sent fishing rods into the water. Sometimes Naruto just wanted to open his mouth to say something, but Kisame looked at him so much that the boy immediately fell silent, looking at the water and sighing heavily. There was nothing for the first half hour, but then everything went like clockwork and they began to quickly pull out the fish. But the calm did not last long. Suddenly, out of nowhere, 6 members of the Umbu jumped out and 4 more were hiding in trees. Kisame immediately jumped up and grabbed his sword. "You're nothing but trouble," he snorted, looking at Naruto and then at a whole squad of potentially dangerous shinobi. The man's hands gripped the sword tightly. Naruto was looking at the whole situation, a little confused about what was going on. "Naruto Uzumaki, we have come for you to return to Konoha," said one stocky Umbu, holding a kunai in his hands and, like all the others, ready to attack. The boy clutched the fishing rod in his hands and all the humiliation and aggression directed at him flashed before his eyes again. "I'm not going back to Konoha, my home is here," he said sternly, looking at people who were completely strangers to him. Kisame was already prepared for the fact that the squad could attack him at any moment. He wouldn't worry if he was alone, but he has a child with him. Dear child for Itachi. The Umbu squad even hesitated at first. Why take the child to the village if he didn't want to? And why fight an Akatsuki member they don't know anything about? But still, the order was an order and it was impossible to disobey it. 2 members of the Umbu immediately rushed at Kisame and they almost reached the goal and even thought that they would hurt Kisame, but it was not there. One move and there was a sword in front of him, so I hit the first shinobi just on the sword. The bandages relaxed and sharp spikes appeared from them and pierced the man's leg to the knee. But the second Umbu was stopped by water, forcing him to suffocate in a circle of water. "Well, who's next?" he asked, throwing away both the attacking shinobi and licking his lips. Naruto was always amazed by the coolness of Itachi and Kisame in battles, tried to look up to them. Therefore, I trained hard even in something simple. Now the boy was standing with his mouth open and watching the older man. There was excitement in Kisame's eyes, so he gripped his sword harder and prepared for a new attack. This time, the members of the Umbu rushed at once, but he repelled their blows with one swing of the Samahata. As it turned out, it was a distraction to pick up the wounded shinobi, as well as capture Naruto. That's what the members of the Umbu did. "Kisame," Naruto shouted before the squad disappeared behind the foliage. The man cursed and instantly jerked after him, but then stopped. After all, now he can get rid of this child forever. But after all, Itachi, he's going to get hurt again. Kisame growled in despair and rushed forward to catch up with the Umbu squad. Infuriating that he roared, tearing down a whole tree in front of him, because there was no time to dodge, and his nerves were boiling. "He's catching up with us," said one of the Umbu, who was carrying a wounded comrade. The other, most likely the one who was the commander of the squad, gestured to the 2 extreme ones to stay and detain the Akatsuki member. The most important thing was to get to the village of List. After all, one Kisame would hardly be able to defeat a large number of Konoha shinobi. "Let me go. I'm not going back to Konoha. Let me go now," Naruto shouted, twitching and trying to push away the masked man who was holding him tightly. Kisame finally thought he was getting closer to the escapees, but when he ran through a couple of trees, he noticed the explosive seals too late. Fuck. At the same moment there was an explosion, but the man managed to protect himself with a sword and a water shell. As soon as the smoke cleared a little, two shinobi rushed at him, but almost immediately they were seriously injured due to Kisame's blows. If you don't die, tell your people that I don't like fire. He roared, immediately continuing his pursuit. The eyes were already so mad that it was scary to look into them. Soon the man finally caught up with the squad. There were only 4 people left to fight with him, because 2 were badly wounded and were lying at the site of the explosion of seals, 1 with Naruto, 2 wounded and 1 shinobi, who was holding a badly wounded member of the Umbu. Kisame understood that he might just not have time, so he tried to sort out these 4 as quickly as possible. But because of his inattention, he was hit in the side with a kunai. Fuck you, he hissed, knocking down the last one who hit him with a kunai with his sword and piercing him with thorns. I had to run on, and the blood was pouring out of the wound. Quickly tearing off the lower part of the cloak, he somehow tightened his wound and moved forward behind Naruto and the remaining members of the Umbu. The distance did not seem to shrink, but on the contrary decreased. Kisame was already getting tired. The man made a few last jerks, accelerating and finally noticing Naruto's bright yellow hair in front of him. The boy also saw the older man and began to twitch even more intensely. Kisame, he shouted, trying to escape and even starting to bite. Then it dawned on him. The boy tore out a member of Umbu kunai from the bag and stuck it in the shinobi's leg, who was holding him. The wounded man immediately stopped, letting go of Naruto, who flew down, hitting the branches. Fortunately, Kisame managed to react and created a water bubble into which Naruto fell. The boy's hands and face were covered in small scratches due to branches, and he himself was unconscious because he hit his head hard on one of the branches while falling. Kisame tried to deal with them as quickly as possible. He was also hit a couple of times and once almost hit by the kunai, but in the end all the enemies were defeated. He stepped on the chief's chest and growled, spitting blood from a split lip, "He lives with us, remember this and tell everyone in the village. You will never take it away for anything. He is a full-fledged member of the Akatsuki." After that, he kicked Umbu's member and grabbed onto his side, even his cloak was stained with blood. The man threw his sword behind his back and went down to Naruto. At first he tried to bring the guy to himself, but then he just picked him up. "I went to the cave to lick the wounds and give Itachi to Naruto." It was also desirable to yell at him for all this, but then the desire disappeared, because Itachi was not guilty of the word at all. "And what he found in you, asshole. You're an ordinary boy, there's nothing in you. You just, simply, magnet." Kisame sighed and pressed Naruto's body to himself, straightening his hair. "The man did not want to accept the fact that you are also a pile of metal that this magnet attracts to you, and with furious force. So they dragged their feet, or rather Kisame dragged. For a long time he had not been so ruffled in battles, probably because Itachi was always there and the former shinobi of the fog relaxed, which played a cruel joke on him. Soon he reached the cave and opened it, somehow going inside and approaching Itachi, sitting Naruto on the floor and then leaning against the wall himself. Many shinobi were no longer there, probably went about their business again. Only Kakuzu with Haiden and Deidara with Obito and Sasori remained in the cave. Itachi looked at them in surprise and then even somehow a chill ran down his back. "What happened? Where have you been? What's wrong with him?" He inundated the elder with questions about Naruto. Kisame sighed and began to take off his cloak to properly bandage the wound. Umbu squad from Konoha came for him. "I had to fight back. This kid is nothing but trouble." He said the second without looking into the eyes of his partner. It was clear that he was talking because of his pride. Itachi sighed and laid Naruto on the mattress, taking off his raincoat and jacket, examining him. The scratches were quite insignificant. Well, due to the fact that the nine-tailed was sitting in it, they had already begun to tighten. Itachi calmed down and just covered him with a blanket, approaching Kisame. let me see that, he said, touching the elder's side, which made the partner twitch. Don't, it's fine, Kisame snorted, untying a piece of cloth with which he had previously tightened the wound. She was all soaked in his blood. Itachi sighed and walked away from his friend, leaving for the exit of the cave. Soon he returned with a bucket of water and rags. We need to wash it, otherwise it will fester. He said, wetting a cloth and starting to gently wash and wipe his friend's wound. Kisame sometimes grumbled and squeezed his hands on his chest harder. Soon Itachi finished and bandaged the wound. We'll probably wait until you get better, and then we'll go on a mission. Thank you so much for saving Naruto. He whispered, looking at Kisame with gratitude. The elder shinobi just sighed and awkwardly patted him on the head. You're welcome. He said, then looking at Kakuzu and shouting to him, I need a new raincoat. After that, the man went to his mattress and lay down on it to rest a little. Soon he fell asleep. Itachi came up to Naruto and squatted down next to him, stroking his head and then covering him with a blanket. Now he was watching the sleep of the elder shinobi in the ninja larvae. Time is running so fast. Now Naruto finally gets into the very middle of the target, and now he is throwing not only kunai, but also shurikens. During these 3 years, what has not happened? They got into such scrapes, countless Umbu detachments sometimes ran after them. All this motivated Naruto to study. He dreamed of protecting the people dear to him. Now the trio was passing through some kind of lawn in the forest with wildflowers, cornflowers, daisies, dandelions. Naruto was so happy when he saw them. Itachi-san. Kisame-san. Can we stay here for a little while? I'm going to do something here. Okay. By the way, for some time now Naruto began to treat Kisame with the same respect. The former shinobi of the mist sighed, looking at this annoying ray of sunshine. Itachi nodded to his child and leaned against the trunk of a tree, covering his eyes. Due to frequent use, they hurt him a lot. And this pain was accumulating. Itachi, again? Kisame asked, offering his shoulder to his friend, on which his partner gratefully laid his head. Hoshigaki would like to be outraged about the fact that they stopped because of the nonsense and the whim of Uzumaki, but when he saw that Itachi was not very well again, he did not say anything. Yes, quite often lately. Thank you for your concern, Kisame. He said, coughing slightly and hiding his nose in the collar of his raincoat. Kisame sighed, imperceptibly adjusting a lock of his partner's hair. Naruto climbed into the very middle of the clearing, and some dandelion seeds were in his hair. The boy was poring over something, sometimes even puffing, in a hurry. There were cornflowers and daisies lying around him. The boy was weaving wreaths for Kisame and Itachi. Konan taught him, in general. Thanks to her, he learned a lot, mostly with paper, but all sorts of needlework like wreaths were also included in the list of things studied. The boy finished the first wreath and covered it with leaves so that the elders would not see. Then he hurriedly began to weave a second wreath. He decided not to do it to himself. He wanted to make people dear to him pleasant. The boy sneezed and immediately tensed, thinking that attention would be paid to him. But this did not happen, because Itachi seemed to be dozing, but Kisame was watching him. Soon the second wreath was ready and the already sunny boy lit up even more. He got up and ran up to them, hiding his hands behind his back. Close your eyes, he asked, looking at them. Itachi first sleepily opened his eyes, but then closed them. Kisame did it, having time to roll his eyes and look at his brain again. Naruto pulled out wreaths, one of daisies with several woven cornflowers, and the other of cornflowers with woven daisies. He handed the first one to Itachi, and the second to Kisame. This is for you. Smiling with all 32 teeth, the boy said, looking at them. Itachi opened his eyes and broke into a smile, taking a wreath in his hand. Will you put it on for me yourself? He asked, tilting his head and waiting for Naruto's actions. The boy was even more delighted and put his creation on Itachi's head himself. Kisame sighed, holding a wreath in his hands and stealing glances at his friend. It suited him, and very much, so he looked gentler or something. Kisame-san, will you wear it? Naruto asked hopefully, looking at the man as if waiting for a miracle. Kisame sighed and put a wreath on his head, immediately causing a smile on Itachi's face. It looked very funny on his protruding hair. What are you laughing at? Now I'll take it off, and I won't wear it. Kisame said, rolling his eyes, then looking at Naruto and Itachi. But then the most fun began. Loud laughter rang out from afar, not even laughter, but some kind of gasping. Fuck. Kisame? Have you become a forest fairy? Somewhere 30 meters away from them, leaning on his three-pronged scythe, Haiden was standing, even blushing with laughter. Kakuzu was just silent. Someone's corpse is hanging on his back, probably they are going to exchange it for money again. Oh, you, Kisame only tried to find words to insult Haiden, but Naruto stepped forward, looking sternly at Haiden. Don't offend Kisame-san. I wove it for him and it suits him, do you understand? To say that Hoshigaki was surprised is to say nothing. And Itachi was smiling so proudly, hiding his smile in his collar, as if for his own son. You see, and you said that he is attached only to me. To you too, he also loves you, I'm not afraid of that word. Itachi said softly. The fact is that a couple of days ago they had a conversation about the fact that Naruto treats Itachi well only, and Kisame does not really like him. But as it turned out, everything was wrong and Itachi's beliefs were correct. You brother, I was thrown, Kakuzu. Betrayed. Naruto, to the heart. Okay, fuck it with a horse, come here, you little asshole. Haiden was not a touchy person at all. Well, this is on the condition that religion is not affected. But if you somehow offend her, you will at best be cursed with a 2-story exquisite mat, and at worst you will be lying somewhere in a groove with a water lily on your head. Naruto was glad that Haiden called him and ran to him, jumping on the elder and hugging him tightly. Do you remember what ramen owes me? He asked, tilting his head and smiling cunningly. Haiden rubbed the back of his head with one hand and then looked at Kakuzu. He ate it, and even beat me. Haiden was indignant, although in fact they had not yet reached the village where they could buy ramen. Kakuzu rolled his eyes at this and looked at the corpse behind him. We're late, Haiden. He said in his usual irritated voice. Haiden rolled his eyes too, and lowered Naruto to the ground, patting his head. I promise, but I'll bring you some ramen. Come on, run to your own already. Haiden smiled at the boy, and then he and Kakuzu went about their business. Naruto ran up to his teammates so to speak and asked, does Kakuzu-san have such a hobby of carrying people on his shoulders? He just noticed it more than once, and somehow it was even unusual to see Kakuzu without some carcass on his shoulder. No. It's just him at work. Itachi answered and then coughed, again trying to hide that there were traces of blood on his hand, but Kisame saw everything. Uchiha leaned against a tree and smiled slightly at Naruto. Do you want to spend the night here? It's beautiful after all. He suggested, looking at the boy. Naruto came up to him and took the sleeve of his cloak, looking into Itachi's eyes. Itachi-san, don't lie and force yourself. If you don't feel well, then let's take a break. Kasami-san and I are worried about you. He said very seriously, clutching the cloak even harder than before. Itachi put his other hand on his ward's hair and ruffled it a little. Thank you very much, Naruto. Then that's what we'll do. The man replied and rolled down the tree, covering his eyes. Naruto nodded and immediately ran off to collect firewood to make a fire. Still, I'll show you to a familiar ninja medic. I don't like all this, Itachi. He put his hand to his partner's head and then sighed. The forehead was hot, and Itachi himself looked painful to think that it was just fatigue. Whatever you say, Kisame. He just didn't have the strength to deny or refuse anything anymore. Moreover, he understood that it would probably become much easier for him this way. Kisame laid out a bed for himself and Itachi. Then I thought a little and did the same for Naruto. After all, the kid ran to collect firewood, also helps. Kisame approached Itachi and helped him up, bringing him to bed and taking off his cloak without a drop of shame. You're burning up. This was the first time that Itachi was so feverish and even shaking. The older man helped him get into bed and covered him with a blanket, wrapping him up. Then his hand went to his forehead to remove the bandage and put a cloth soaked with water in its place later. Don't touch it, Itachi said, grabbing his hand and squeezing, looking at his partner with tired eyes. Kisame sighed, looking at his friend. I'll just take it off to apply a cold compress, okay? No one will take it away from you. He spoke as gently as possible to convince the younger to remove his hand. It worked out, and Itachi relaxed his grip, allowing Shinobi to pull off the bandage. Kisame put it next to Itachi, and with the help of his own techniques he moistened the cloth, then folded it several times and put it on his partner's head. That's it, we'll go to the doctor's tomorrow. It's going to be okay, Itachi. Kisame, although he created the appearance of a cold-blooded person, like all Akatsuki, but he was still capable of caring and worrying. In fact, Akatsuki are not a bit evil, they are also people and they are not monsters. They have dreams, some plans, they just want peace. They are, just people. Itachi only smiled slightly and his hand slid lower from Kisame's wrist, grabbing his thumb, and then, getting heavier in the desire to go down. The elder shinobi looked at it with bated breath, he had never seen his partner so weak and defenseless. And maybe he was like that only for Kisame and Naruto. No one will know anyway. When Naruto returned, the owner of the Sharingan was already dozing, still clutching his partner's finger in his hand. The boy folded the twigs and lit a fire himself. Itachi-san is really bad, right? I'm worried about Itachi-san. Naruto said, clutching a twig in his hands, looking at the older shinobi. The child was so worried that even his eyes watered. Oh, my God. Come here, Onion Mountain. Kisame snorted and held out his free hand to him. The boy approached the man and sat down next to him, looking at Itachi with his blue eyes. Long and piercing. Then he yawned and leaned more comfortably against the shark shinobi, closing his eyes. Kisame at first wanted to be indignant about this, but then he just sighed, throwing a part of the blanket from his bed on Naruto. All night long, Kisame kept watch over Itachi's temperature, changed his wet cloth and made sure that he did not open up. By morning, my eyes were already just sticking together. The man carefully laid Naruto on the edge of Itachi's bed, and he laid down literally in the grass to be closer to his partner and the child. So he fell asleep, worrying about these two little children. Kisame watched them all night. Itachi slept very badly, often tossed and curled up into a ball. Although he tried to be an adult and behave like an adult, but in fact he was just a child who had to. Only in the morning it became more or less easier for him, and he even began to breathe more calmly. Kisame has already firmly decided for himself that as soon as these two wake up, they will go to his friend Ninja Medic. Naruto woke up first, opened his blue eyes and rubbed them afterwards, looking first at the older shinobi, and then at Itachi. Is he going to be okay? Isn't that right? He asked, looking into Kisame's very eyes and waiting for an answer. The former shinobi of the fog sighed and patted him on the head. It turned out a little awkward, because he rarely did this before. Yes, everything will be fine, we will take him to the doctor today. Don't worry. Kisame got up and began to stretch his cramped legs, crouching down a couple of times and bending his body back and forth, left and right. Then he packed up all the things and still woke Itachi up. The guy coughed and sat up in bed, wrapped in a blanket, because it was very cold. Well, more precisely, in general it was warm, it just made him shiver. Kisame handed him a travel cup with hot tea, to which the younger nodded gratefully. Naruto was just looking at his things and sat down right in front of Itachi, straightening the plaid on him and wrapping it up harder. Itachi-san, we're worried about you. Please be patient for a while. Naruto said and then awkwardly kissed the elder on the forehead, immediately getting up and starting to pack further, as well as bringing a cloak and putting it next to Itachi. The elder smiled at the kiss and put his hand to his head. Every day it seemed to him more and more that Naruto was like a son to him. Soon they gathered and went towards the village of Hidden Mist, where a medical woman lived on the outskirts, who could help with this. They walked slower than usual, because Itachi was having a hard time walking because of the high temperature. It got to the point that closer to lunch, he leaned against a tree, breathing fast, and began to slide down. Hey, Itachi, what are you doing? Kisame was already worried about him a lot, but when Itachi couldn't even move his legs anymore, he began to worry more. The man approached him and lifted him up, gently clasping his waist and under his knees, taking him in his arms. Itachi then closed his eyes, turning his head to the shinobi's chest and burying his hot forehead in it. Naruto immediately approached them and looked at Itachi. It was clear in the child's eyes that he was going through. Kisame-san, please come quickly. He asked, to which the older man sked, but then nodded. Finally, the pace increased, and they walked most of the way. There was about half a day of travel left, but it was still a nice decision to stop for the night. It is dangerous to wait at night, given the constant fog that envelopes and hides the village, as well as the ninjas who guard it. Kisame was with Itachi, but Naruto lit a fire and laid out the beds. The boy began to fry bread on the fire, shifting the stick, worried. The elder shinobi put Itachi to bed, and covered him with a blanket, again putting a cold cloth on his forehead. But it didn't help much and Itachi curled up into a ball, trembling and chattering with his teeth, sometimes coughing in a kind of half-sleep. Kisame eventually unbuttoned his raincoat and, wrapping the younger one in a cocoon of a blanket, pressed him to himself, wrapping him in a raincoat to warm him up. Would you like to sit closer to the fire, Kisame-san? Naruto suggested, taking a bite of lightly fried bread. Kisame rolled his eyes at that, looking at him. I know without you. He answered rudely and nervously, which made Naruto's eyes run, and the boy mutter an apology and turn away, chewing the insult with bread. Kisame was very worried about his friend, so he snapped and even then abruptly began to feel guilty. He said it without thinking at all. Hey, Naruto. I'm sorry, you'd better come here. Kisame asked, apologizing very awkwardly. I didn't know how to do it at all, so I felt terribly ashamed. Naruto immediately smiled and approached Kisame, waiting for further instructions. Well, you can sit next to me, it will probably be warmer this way. Together, after all. He said this phrase without looking at Itachi's ward at all, and taking his eyes away more. Naruto smiled at him so sincerely that even without seeing this smile, Kisame also wanted to smile. Thank you very much, Kisame-san. Naruto leaned against the man and closed his eyes, slightly squeezing the edge of Kisame's sleeve. Soon he fell asleep and began to gradually slide down. Shinobi sighed at this, but now at least he didn't feel guilty in front of the boy. After putting Itachi on the bed, well, for a while, Kisame shifted this yellow-haired misunderstanding to bed and then returned to his friend. It's cold, Kisame, Itachi whispered, finally opening his eyes and pulling his hand out from under the blanket to take the hand of Shinobi Mist. Kisame sat closer and covered him with his blanket, stroking his disheveled hair. "He'll feel better soon," he answered, and still decided to do it. Lifting the blanket, he climbed under it and hugged Itachi to him, covering him harder and stroking his head. Because of this action, Itachi's cheeks, already red because of the temperature, seemed to become even redder. Just at the moment of a glimmer of consciousness, so to speak, he realized that he was very close to Kisame. Soon the eyelids of the former shinobi leaf closed, and he fell asleep, clutching his friend's cloak in his hands. Kisame slept at times. He would sleep for an hour or half an hour, then wake up and immediately ventilate his partner, and then continue to sleep. In the morning Kisame opened his eyes and realized that he was terribly tired. For the first time he even had bruises under his eyes. The man sat up and stretched. His back hurt because he wasn't sleeping in a very comfortable position. Sleepy eyes fell on Itachi. The younger one was still wrapped in a blanket and trembling slightly, not so much anymore. Kisame stroked his hair, picking through the strands, and then touched his cheek with his finger, immediately pulling it away. Shaking his head, the man got up and began to get ready, simultaneously waking Naruto up. Hoshigaki carried the owner of the Sharingan in his arms for the remaining half-day of the journey. And finally they reached the border of the village, where the fog was even thicker. Kisame turned sharply to the left and walked faster, hugging Itachi to him. Naruto was fascinated by all this, and when he lagged behind, he immediately started running, because he was afraid of getting lost in this fog. Soon an old and dilapidated-looking hut appeared in front of them. Kisame immediately went to the door and knocked with his foot, because his hands were busy. Naruto hid behind the elder because he was a little scared. No one opened for a long time, so the former shinobi of the fog growled and knocked again, more insistently. Only after that, the creaking of floorboards was heard, and then the door opened. On the threshold is an old woman who was about 40 or 45 years old. She was much shorter than Kisame, and in general looked very small and dry. The woman looked up and even staggered back when she saw who had come to her. "Kisame?" she gasped, looking at him, and then let him into the hut with the boy, even more surprised when she saw the child. "You haven't looked in for a long time. I already thought they'd caught you," she said, closing the doors behind her and leaning against the door, looking at the shinobi. "I'll tell you everything later, Haru. I need help. Can you cure him or at least tell me what's wrong with him?" Kisame asked, hugging Itachi closer to him. The woman nodded and then pointed with her hand to a kind of couch or bed. It was not clear what it was. Kisame put the younger shinobi there, who was curled up because of a fever. Naruto was so worried that he took Kisame's hand without shame, clinging to him and looking at Itachi. The man, oddly enough, also squeezed the boy's hand in response, lightly patting him on the head with his other hand. "Is this really the last Uchiha?" the woman asked, looking at him and then coming closer, starting her examination. To her question, she received only a nod from Kisame. She undressed Itachi, well, more precisely, she took off only the top, making him tremble more. After a quick inspection, she exhaled while looking at him. "He's fine. This is a common cold. Just because he often uses his eyes, his immunity is too weakened and therefore the cold proceeds like this. I would advise him not to use his eyes for a month and just relax." The woman took out some bottles from a box with bottles and gave 2 to Kisame, and the friend immediately gave Itachi a drink, lifting his head. "I think the temperature will drop by evening," Haru said, taking a white cloth and wetting it in some kind of solution, as well as taking twigs, wetting them too. Then she bandaged Itachi's eyes. "Let him go with this for a week, and then take it off," she ordered, looking at Kisame and throwing a blanket over Uchiha's trembling body. Good. Thank you, Haru. The elder shinobi exhaled and pulled Naruto by the shoulder, even smiling slightly and telling him that Itachi would be fine. Move it to the next room, it's much warmer there, and I'll cook some food in the meantime. At least we'll talk, after all, you've been somewhere where the devils have been carrying you for 6 years. Naruto, sit with Itachi, I need to talk to Haru, I'll call you when lunch is ready. Naruto nodded and climbed onto the bed, sitting down next to the person dear to him and starting to lightly stroke his head. Kisame left the room, sitting down at the table and starting his long conversation with the woman. The boy was sorting through strands of Itachi's hair and then took him by the hand. Itachi-san. I miss you so much. And your smile is also missing. He whispered, wiping his face because he just wanted to cry, but he promised not to. Once little Naruto, when he was still 4 years old, he heard some mother singing a lullaby to her child when he was crying. The words were so etched into his memory that he quietly began. From edge to edge, the sky is on fire and all hopes and dreams disappear in it, but you fall asleep, and an angel flies to you, will wipe away your tears so that you laugh and may go to sleep, in my arms, go to sleep, under the singing of the rain, far away, where the sky ends the edge you will find paradise lost. He sang softly like that, in a whisper, gently stroking Itachi's hair with his fingers. The elder shinobi even stopped shaking so much by the end of the lullaby. Maybe it was the medicine starting to take effect, but Naruto was sure it was because of his song. Soon Kisame came into the room and called the boy to eat. It was so great to finally eat a kind of homemade ramen. It was so delicious that Naruto even asked for more and ate too much. After eating, he immediately got drowsy, and Haru suggested that he eat and sleep, to which the boy immediately agreed. So soon a woman's soft snoring could be heard from the bed. Where did you pick this up? She asked, looking at the yellow-haired miracle and smiling. Escaped from the same village as Itachi. He was bullied because the nine-tailed one was sealed in him. Itachi picked him up when he was 4. Now he is a full-fledged member of the Akatsuki, even walks in his raincoat, well, sometimes. Just because of his great mobility, he is not very comfortable. Kisame answered, helping her clear the table and looking furtively at the room where her friend was sleeping. 9-tailed? Wow, poor boy. Haru gasped, looking at the child sleeping in the bed. Most of all, we are afraid with Itachi of the moment when he will already start training hard. How the 9-tailed one will behave and what will happen to him. Kisame went to the door to the room where his partner was sleeping. I think that everything will be fine, since he is under the supervision of people like you. Good night, Kisame. She smiled, sitting down at her desk and starting to grind herbs in a mortar. Kisame also wished her good night and went to a friend. The man sat down on the bed and put his hand to the younger's forehead. The temperature dropped a little. Unable to restrain a strange and hitherto unknown impulse, Kisame lightly kissed Itachi on the forehead, after stroking his hair. Literally a minute after that, he was abruptly grabbed by the arm. Kisame, why can't I see? He asked excitedly and then coughed. Kisame flinched because of such a sudden movement, but then exhaled, adjusting the blanket on his friend. Just sleep, Itachi. Everything will be fine. Get some sleep, okay? I'll tell you everything in the morning. He said, stroking his head and then lying down next to him, wrapping the younger one in a blanket. Itachi breathed more often and then shuddered again because of Kisame's cold hands. It must have been a momentary glimmer of consciousness during a fever, because then Itachi fell asleep again, sometimes tossing in his sleep. But still, Kisame finally managed to sleep that night. The scariest thing is to see everything first, and at some point wake up and see a black abyss in front of your eyes. How terrible it is to realize that you can no longer look at the sun, the moon, the smiles of people dear to you, grass, trees and so on, so on, so on. How much the heart contracts and skips beats. And the most important thing is a lump in your throat, it suffocates and compresses your whole body. Itachi experienced all this in a couple of minutes when he woke up in the morning. His hands began to shake, and he began to feel his head with trembling fingers, and when his fingers felt the fabric, he was ready to tear it off. "You can't, Itachi," Kisame's sleepy voice said, and his hands wrapped around the younger's thin wrists. The lump finally managed to be swallowed, and Itachi asked in a hoarse voice, "Why can't I see and why are my eyes blindfolded?" He even thought at first that they had been caught and blindfolded so that he could not use Sharingan, but it turned out not to be so, because the bed was soft, and his hands and feet were free. "You had a fever because of a cold, it's all because you often use Sharingan, that's why you were so bad. It weakens you a lot. The doctor told you to walk around for a week in this bandage and it is advisable not to use Sharingan for a month. That's why we're going back to the lair right now and we'll just rest for a month. Understood? At the same time, Kakuzu has long offered to build a house. I think if we persuade Haydn, we will gradually begin construction, and then others will catch up. I'm sick of sleeping in a cave, to be honest." He snorted, adjusting the blanket on Itachi and then getting out of bed. The guy sighed, clutching the sheet with his hands and shaking his head slightly. "I'll be a burden to you and Naruto," he said softly and so distressed. Kisame sighed and patted him lightly on the shoulder, then retreating to the door. "You will never be a burden to us. Remember that," he said the latter a little louder and even with some kind of threat, which caused a cautious smile on the face of the blind shinobi. Naruto was already up and as soon as Kisame opened the door, he almost knocked the older shinobi off his feet, flew into the room and jumped on the bed, hugging Itachi. "Itachi-san. How are you? Itachi-san. I was so worried about you, you were so sickly. We were worried about you and Kisame-san." Itachi hugged the younger and buried his nose in his shoulder. Naruto could not even imagine how important it was for him to know that he was dear to someone, that he was not alone in this world. It was so important for him to just be needed by someone. "I'm sorry I made you worry, Naru." He apologized, stroking the boy's hair and then slightly moving his head to the side, because there was a blush on his cheeks. "Itachi-san, Kisame-san and I will protect and take care of you. If someone attacks us, I will definitely protect you," he said firmly and confidently, looking at the elder. Itachi would give anything now to look at the boy's face. Their dialogue was interrupted by Kisame, who called for breakfast. After breakfast, they said goodbye to the lovely hostess of the house and set off. The first half of the day Naruto led the guy by the hand and pointed him where to go, and the remaining half Kisame. And so it was almost every day. To this was added the help with eating and changing clothes. After 5 days of such a journey, it finally reached the cave. They'll be safe here at last. Having laid out his things, Kisame left the cave to estimate the approximate place where the house would be. Itachi stayed inside. The guy walked around the cave, feeling everything and getting used to moving like this now. But Naruto followed Kisame and when he calculated the meters, pulled his hand. "Teach me to walk on water," he asked, looking into the eyes of the elder, that he already wanted to snap back, but something in the eyes of this child made him agree. And he guessed that. "Do you want to surprise Itachi when he can see again?" he asked, to which he taught a consonant nod and a sniff. "I want Itachi-san to be happy for me and I also want a headband, as you all have," Naruto said, remembering Deidara's promise that he would be given a protector only after he learned to walk on water. Kisame sighed and walked with him towards the river. "Okay, I'll teach you. Be prepared for the fact that in one day you will do it." The elder warned him, looking at the river, but then abruptly turned the kunai into a tree, almost to the very top. "First, concentrate the chakra in your legs and try to climb the tree. My advice is, better do it with a run." Naruto nodded and for some reason squeezed his eyes shut, starting to run away, and then tried to climb a tree, but only touched the trunk with his feet and hit his forehead. Kisame laughed from that, looking at the boy. "Just open your eyes." He smiled, sitting down at another tree and starting to watch the guy train. Naruto nodded at this remark and continued. An hour passed. At first, Naruto's bruises and abrasions on you became twice as large as usual, but he kept going. Kisame at some point got tired of watching him and went into the cave to cook something to eat. He remembered only in the evening. He was struck by the fact that the guy still hasn't returned. Kisame left the cave and returned to the river. His eyes opened a picture of a pretty tired Naruto running up a tree as far as the 5th branch. He even froze there for a while, but then he just closed his eyes, falling from fatigue. Kisame managed to run up and catch him, holding him in his arms. "Why burden yourself so much on the first day?" He sighed as he walked away towards the cave. Naruto only mumbled something at his remark. "The poor guy is tired." Kisame returned to the cave and put the younger one to bed. Itachi, as he heard footsteps and rustles, got up from the ground. "Kisame? Where's Naruto?" he asked, turning his head to where his partner was supposed to be. "He was just studying, that's why he was tired." "Sleeping already?" As soon as Itachi heard this, he broke into a smile, sinking back onto his bed and hugging his knees, throwing a blanket over his legs. "You know, I'm happy for him as for my son. It's such a warm feeling." Kisame only grunted at this and put Onigiri's hands in his. "I think that's good. He sees you as a father, too." Itachi rubbed his nose at this. He would probably like to be called dad someday. Kisame grinned at this and also began to eat, wishing him a pleasant appetite. The next day, the morning began with Heiden's noisy screams, who was arguing with Kakuzu about something. Naruto opened his eyes and immediately perked up, looking at Haiden. "Where's my ramen?" Haiden theatrically rolled his eyes and made a very touchy face. "Here you come to him, and only give him ramen hyamen." For this, he received a slap on the head from Kakuzu. Even this gloomy man remembered that with a child without a mat. Although perhaps Haiden was immune from this, because perhaps only Jashin can make him not swear. Naruto came up to him a little tired and hugged him, then holding out his hands to give him the ramen. Haiden rolled his eyes and handed him a whole bag of Uzumaki's favorite food and then flicked his nose. Kakuzu was dragged away by Kisame, and they sat at the map of the area to choose a place where they could build a house. "What about the others?" Kisame asked, looking at his friend and then, leaning against the wall, his back hurt sleeping on the stone floor. "The ground is better. Deidara, Tobi and Sasori are 3 days away, Pain and Konan will be in a week." The man answered, tracing the already selected area on the map and calculating how much materials will be needed, and how much it will cost to. Great. That was settled. 2 days later, construction began. All materials were purchased and delivered. Kisame, Kakuzu and Haiden started building. All these 2 days Naruto has been training hard, getting very tired and barely crawling to his bed. Finally, he managed to get to the top of the tree and descend back. As soon as it happened more than 3 times in a row, the boy ran to Kisame. Naruto jumped on the older one, who was holding the board and hugged him, smiling happily. Kisame-san. I did it. I climbed to the top. Is it possible to walk on water now? Can I? He asked, tugging at Hoshigaki's jacket because they had taken off their raincoats. Kisame sighed and nodded to the others that he would leave. Haiden cursed, but Kakuzu just nodded silently. The senior member of the Akatsuki and the blue-eyed one went to the river. Kisame looked at the boy and calmly went into the water, holding out his hand to him. Try to construct the chakra already and go into the water. If you suddenly fall, I'll catch you. Naruto nodded and concentrated very hard, stepping carefully on the water. The first leg held, and he felt the support under him. The blue eyes looked at the elder, and the hand reached forward. It was still scary to fall into the water. The second leg also felt the support. I'm standing. Kisame-san. I'm standing. Naruto said, looking at him, but the next minute he fell into the water because he lost control of the chakra. Kisame held him back and therefore Naruto fell into the water only up to his waist, and then he was already pulled out and taken under his arm. The main thing is not to lose control, and so well done. I think Itachi will be proud of you. Rolling his eyes, Kisame said, although he was also happy about the achievements of this child. Probably, he also managed to get very attached to him. Let's try again and don't lose concentration. The older man said, putting him on the ground and walking back again with his arm outstretched. Naruto nodded and began to try further. He failed a couple more times, but finally on the fifth table, looking at the elder. And when will Itachi-san's blindfold be removed? He asked, looking at Kisame and still holding on to the water. Although before that, if he spoke, he immediately lost control. Today, if you want, let's go shoot together now. I was planning on tonight, but you want to show him that, right? Kisame grinned, looking into Naruto's blue eyes and folding his arms on his chest. The boy nodded, looking at him, and smiled, so joyfully and so sunny. Oh, that's it, I'm going blind, let's go already. I lightly patted his hair and tilted him forward, leaving the river. Naruto joyfully ran after him. They reached the cave and entered. Itachi was now sitting on the floor and apparently engaged in meditation. Naruto ran up to him and hugged him, knocking him off his pose. Itachi-san. Kisame-san said that you can already take off the blindfold. It's all so cool, isn't it? He chattered, clutching the cool hands of the elder shinobi in his hands. Itachi smiled and patted Naruto on the shoulder, and then on the head. If you can, then maybe you can take it off for me yourself, Uchiha suggested, already not finding a place for himself from waiting. Even the heart began to beat faster. Kisame clung to the wall and watched these two. They really were like father and son. Yes, okay, now, I'll be quick. Naruto replied, putting his hands behind the elder's head and untying the knot. The blindfold that was in front of Itachi's eyes weakened, and then completely flew down. At first, the dark eyes were afraid to open, but then they decided. Fortunately, it was dark in the cave and the eyes, accustomed to the darkness, were not so painful. How happy Itachi was to finally see Naruto's happy face and Kisame's slightly grumpy eyes. He pulled the boy to him and hugged him tightly, stroking his hair. It's like you've grown even more in these few days. Itachi said, looking at Naruto as his son. The boy smiled because of this and then immediately jumped up, pulling the elder's hand. Itachi-san. Let's go faster. I have a surprise for you. This made Itachi surprised and follow Naruto, but Kisame only grunted, grabbing Shinobi by the hand and putting Konoha's protector in it. The blue-eyed boy dragged the elder to the river and put him near it. Itachi-san, I've learned, look. Naruto concentrated for a couple of minutes, and then he stepped confidently onto the water and even ran back and forth a little, and then joyfully looked at the elder. "I've learned, Itachi-san." He smiled, forcing Uchiha's lips to stretch into a smile. Now he understood why Kisame had given him the blindfold and remembered the promise he had made 4 years ago. "You're doing great, Naruto. I'm proud of you." Naruto froze after this phrase. How he dreamed that someone would say it at least once, and not drive him away and hit him, not call him a jerk. Just 3 words, "I'm proud of you," and his heart was just ready to jump out of his chest. He always wanted his dad or mom to say it. But now he was so happy that it was Itachi who said those words. It is the Itachi who bears the surname Uchiha, it is the Itachi who took care of him all this time, it is the Itachi who always protects and will always be there, it is his Itachi, Itachi Uchiha. Tears rolled from her blue eyes, like hail. There was no stopping them. He had forbidden himself to cry all this time, and now he just couldn't restrain himself, now he allowed himself to be weak. Naruto ran up to the man and hugged him, snuggling as close as he could. "I love you very much, Itachi-san, thank you for taking care of me all this time." Naruto spoke through sobs and hiccups, clutching the elder's jacket in his hands. Itachi didn't even know how to react to this. His cool hand came down on the boy's head and stroked. The guy squatted down and began to wipe the tears from the boy's face. "I love you too, Naruto," he whispered back, wiping away the tears and the boy's eyes completely, and then pulling out the protector and tying it on Naruto's head. "Now you are a full member of the Akatsuki," Itachi said, straightening the blue-eyed man's hair, and looking at him with a smile. Naruto sniffed and hugged the elder again, not wanting to let go. Kisame saw the whole picture, the man smiled at something of his own and then left to continue building a house, talking about how much this child influenced all of them. Itachi took Naruto in his arms and carried him towards the cave, soothing him with stroking on the head. "Ramen?" Itachi asked, knowing that the boy would definitely not refuse such a thing. "Ramen," Naruto answered, smiling his radiant smile again. More than 2 weeks have passed since Itachi took off the bandage. Naruto and Kisame forbade him to strain, so the guy was frankly bored. Today, at lunch, the last piece of the roof was laid and the house was finally ready, which could not please. Now Itachi had something to do, it was boring to live in an empty and damp place. Raw and the plan without things. Therefore, he began to bring the house into a more lively position. They arranged flowers together with Naruto, then moved all the things and divided the house into rooms. It was decided to live the way a couple or trinity is built, that is, Hiden and Kakuzu, Naruto, Kisame and Itachi, Obito, Deidara and Sasori, Pain and Konan. By the evening, Itachi had already fully equipped their room and was satisfied. There were even wooden beds here now, and finally there was no need to sleep on the floor. They also thought about making a kitchen and not cooking everything on bonfires. The kitchen as a whole also turned out to be very cozy. Probably this will become Itachi's favorite place, because he likes to cook for someone. Now Naruto was having fun with Tobi and Deidara, but Itachi and Kisame were sitting in their room. They're still trying to get him back, according to my information, Kisame said, walking up to the window and looking at the scarlet sunset that scorched the top of the trees. Itachi bit his lip, looking at him. "I've recovered enough to protect him," Itachi answered confidently, letting down his hair and starting to comb it and make it look divine. "You're not thinking right, Itachi. You won't be able to protect him all your life, so you have to take up his training. To teach all the techniques that you know so that he can stand up for himself. There is a huge potential in it, considering that the nine-tail is sealed in it." Kisame turned to the younger one and folded his arms on his chest, looking at him and waiting for the Uchiha's decision. It will be difficult to teach someone who does not have a Sharingan. He sighed and then rubbed the bridge of his nose, lowering his head, and the hair fell from his shoulders, covering part of his face. You know a lot of techniques without Sharingan. So don't wail here. Kisame rolled his eyes, to which Itachi smiled slightly and then nodded, starting to collect the strands in the tail, leaving only the front ones free. Okay, I'll train him. I think Naruto will be very happy. Nevertheless, the guy agreed, rubbing the bridge of his nose and then yawning. Kisame was thinking now, and hard. He had another piece of news, and he didn't know whether to tell Itachi or not. But I still decided not to hide it from him. Your brother is now somehow connected with Orochimaru. It seems to be with the help of a cursed seal. And now he is his disciple. When Itachi heard this, he sked and squeezed the blanket with his hand, looking at Kisame point blank. He worried about his brother and even sometimes secretly visited him, because Hiruzen allowed him to. I'll go to Orochimaru and return Sasuke to the village. The guy said, and Kisame just rolled his eyes. He knew from the very beginning that Itachi would answer like that. They've just known each other too long. Reckless. Firstly, you can't use Sharingan for at least 2 more weeks, and secondly, he wants to take revenge on you, so he is looking for strength. By going there and taking him away, you'll only make it worse. Shinobi answered him, leaning against the wall and folding his arms on his chest. Itachi lowered his eyes down and squeezed the blanket to such an extent that his knuckles turned white and the wreaths on his hands swelled slightly. I don't care. I'll bring him back to the village, even if I have to kill Orochimaru. You know why he needs Sasuke, right? He wanted to take my body and my eyes, and now his. Itachi said, even hissed more, looking straight at Kisame and biting his lip until it bled. Tomorrow I'm going after him, and you and Naruto stay here. Itachi got out of bed and went to the things to take with him what he needed. As soon as he reached for his backpack, they grabbed his arm and turned him around. Are you out of your mind? You're definitely not going anywhere yourself. Kisame growled, looking into Itachi's eyes with his rabid ones. The younger one jerked his hand, looking into his eyes in response, no less angry and furious. I told you I can handle it myself. He snapped and felt his wrist being squeezed harder. Kisame leaned towards him and hissed, listen to me carefully. It was you who first told me that we are not monsters, but people. It was you who first told me that we are like family and friends here, comrades. And friends will definitely not let you in alone. I won't let you in, okay? He let go of his wrist, causing Itachi's eyes to tremble and hide tears under a pile of thick eyelashes. Got it. He answered after a while, exhaling and rolling down the wall, looking at the opposite wall. Do you think if I tell Sasuke everything now, he will understand? Itachi asked, looking at Kisame, who sat down next to him and folded his arms on his chest again. Too small. If he were at least 14 to 15 years old, maybe he would understand. He peeled off the Kisame and tilted his head slightly back. You know, I used to know that he would come sometime and kill me. Because I told him to. And I didn't care. But now. I want to live because I have you and Naruto. I want to live by protecting and educating him. I don't want to die, Kisame. He whispered, squeezing the wrist that Kisame had been squeezing with one hand. The elder shinobi sighed. He'll never reach your level anyway, so you won't die, I promise. He answered and closed his eyes, which made him sleepy and his eyelids refused to be in the open position. Itachi only nodded gratefully at his words. A couple of days have passed since this conversation and Itachi and Kisame are about to leave. The hardest part was explaining to Naruto why they were leaving without him. The boy, by the way, was left in the care of Konan. When the elders left, Naruto only ran away to his room, worried a lot. With this behavior, he also made Itachi nervous. A week later, the shinobi approached one of Orochimaru's lairs, where, according to the reports of the spies, he was supposed to be. They found the entrance and entered. Both were wary because they knew there could be traps. Thank God that everything went well, and they avoided them. Endless tunnels led them to a hall where there was a certain throne and a snake Sannin sat on it, behind which stood Kabuto and a boy whose eyes, at the sight of his brother, were painted to the size of the Earth's orbit. Itachi, I'm so glad to see you. What brings you here? Orochimaru asked, licking his lips and looking straight at the owner of the Sharingan, expecting to see them again and feel all their power. Itachi just opened his mouth to say something, but Sasuke flew up to him, swinging his kunai. Die, he shouted, but Itachi stopped him with one movement, without even using Sharingan. Orochimaru chuckled slightly at this, watching the further development of events. Calm down, Sasuke. You're leaving here right now and going back to Konoha. Understood, Sasuke jerked, trying to kick his brother, but the elder intercepted his leg as well. I'm not going back anywhere. I hate you. You're just a coward and just a jerk. You killed Mom and Dad. I hate you. You're going to die the most horrible death, you beast, Sasuke screamed, tearing himself apart, looking at his brother. Orochimaru even whistled because of this, watching. Itachi froze. These words hurt him so much that at first he was just silent. Long. And he just looked at his brother in wild incomprehension. Shut your mouth, sucker. Kisame growled at him, but Itachi's smooth hand gesture silenced him. All right, Sasuke. I hope you remember, it takes a Mangekai Sharingan to kill me. After that, he released his brother and turned around, leaving the hall. Sasuke wanted to run after him, but was stopped by Orochimaru's snakes. It's too early, Sasuke, you won't win now. We just have to bide our time. Itachi ran out of the cave and fell to his knees, coughing up blood and clutching his throat in his hands. There were tears glistening in his eyes, and a few tears still rolled down from his eyes. Itachi. He's just a kid. Itachi abruptly stood up and pressed him by the breasts to a tree, looking into his eyes with his red and watery ones. It's because of me he's like this. I broke it. I killed everything he loved. I am not worthy of life. He swung and instead of hitting Kisame, he hit the trunk of a tree, breaking his knuckles into blood. Then he walked away, flexing his arm, and the next moment he swung again to hit the barrel, but Kisame stopped him by grabbing his wrist. Calm the fuck down. He growled, pinning Itachi to the tree by the wrist and giving a light slap in the face to make the guy come to his senses. Didn't you tell me that you want to live for Naruto? That you don't want to die? Remember, Itachi, you made the right choice. After that, he released Itachi, whose eyes were now running around in panic. Kisame patted him lightly on the head with stroking movements and apologized for the slap. Let's go home, Naruto is bored. Itachi sank down the trunk to the floor and covered his ears with his hands. There was a feeling that something was strangling him and seemed to be standing behind him. Probably, a panic attack was coming. Itachi tried to even out his breathing, but it turned out badly. Kisame noticed his friend's condition and sighed, picking a couple of flowers. Itachi, look at me, let's go home, Naruto is waiting for you there. Will he weave you a wreath again and everything will be fine? Understood. Itachi looked up at the flowers and took them, pressing them to his nose, inhaling the smell, and then to his chest, looking at the elder with a smile tormented by mental anguish. "Thank you, Kisame," he whispered gratefully, looking at the flowers. "That's nice." Kisame helped him up and grabbed one flower. It seems it was a daisy, stabbing it into the younger's hair. "Let's go faster, we were in such a hurry that we didn't even have a snack at that restaurant, and by the way, I'm terribly hungry." The man muttered, which made Itachi nod and smile again. Following his older comrade home, after a while, Itachi and Kisame returned home. Now it could really be called a house, not a cave. From that day on, Itachi began to train Naruto more thoroughly. The boy grasped everything on the fly. Because of his chakra volume and endurance, he could train all day long, only then Itachi had to carry him in his arms to bed. Fell just. So the years went by, they flew by quickly somewhere between general meetings, training and assignments. Naruto stretched out a lot and grew up, became a handsome young man. Of course, he was no longer 8 or 10 years old, but 15. Naruto was already as tall as Itachi, but he was still shorter than Kisame, which is why the elder often joked about him. Naruto has mastered quite a lot of techniques, or rather all those that Itachi and Kisame knew. Well, except for those techniques that require Sharingan. The guy mastered the elements of wind, fire and water. And finally, Pain recognized him as a real member of the Akatsuki and presented him with a ring with a red core and a kanji on it, which means a fox. Naruto was so happy when he got it and was smiling wide. But Itachi and Kisame felt proud of their ward. The time was very hectic right now. There was one interesting rumor going around. The rumor of Orochimaru's death. And no one knew whether it was true or false. These news also reached Akatsuki, and Pain called Itachi to him for an important conversation. The owner of the Sharingan came to Pain's office and closed the doors behind him, looking at the elder. "Don't look at me like that, Itachi. To be honest, because of your look, everything is shivering." The man began, getting up from the table and looking at the member of the organization who entered. "Don't pull?" Itachi asked, looking at him. He didn't like it when they were looping around the main thing and didn't say the essence. Insightful. Pain grinned, folding his arms on his chest and then sighing. "I think you've heard rumors about Orochimaru's death. My trusted sources said that this is not a rumor, but the truth." "Who do you think killed him, Sasuke?" Itachi answered without hesitation, unbuttoning his raincoat and putting his hand on it, looking straight at him. "That's right." "You've already figured it out, right, Itachi?" the man asked, leaning on the table. Itachi bit his lip. He understood. If Sasuke killed Orochimaru, then he's next. "I heard that you don't want to die. Although I used to be ready for your brother to kill you. Why don't you just talk to him?" Pain asked with a languid sigh, looking at his subordinate. "He won't understand and won't even listen. These are my personal problems and they do not concern our organization. I will solve them myself," Itachi said, turning around and walking away towards the door. His hand touched the handle and was about to turn it. Reckless. Itachi turned to him and sighed, looking into the eyes of an ally. "Stay close to Kisame and Naruto. Don't even think about fighting him." To this, the owner of the Sharingan did not answer anything, just left the office and went to his room. He expected that no one would be there, but, alas, Kisame and Naruto were there. "Itachi-san," Naruto called joyfully, but then he saw the elder's face and was confused. He was, to put it mildly, with a killed expression on his face. "Is something wrong?" Naruto asked and stood up, approaching the elder, and Kisame did the same after him. "It's okay, Naruto. Never mind." Itachi patted him on the head and smiled slightly. Naruto removed his hand and looked into his eyes. "No need to lie to us, we want to help. Itachi-san, you don't have to keep everything to yourself. Understand, we will always support you. We are friends and allies. Naruto said, looking into his eyes. Now there was no uncertainty in them, now he spoke clearly and was confident in his words. Now he was not afraid of making a mistake. Naruto. Itachi whispered and sighed, lowering his eyes. Kisame folded his arms on his chest and then pushed Naruto with one. Come on, hug him like you always do, and Itachi will tell you everything quickly. Naruto did so, hugging the elder, and in response, receiving stroking on the head. Sasuke killed Orochimaru. I'll be next. Pain told me to stay close to you, but I don't want to involve you in this. He said in one breath, taking his eyes down. Naruto looked into Itachi's eyes, lifting his head slightly. Itachi-san, you are my family and I will be ready to give my life for you. So don't even think about the fact that you might die. You think I don't hear when you and Kisame talk in the evenings, and you say that you don't want to die, that now you have a purpose to live. I will protect you and your target. He said firmly. Itachi even got goosebumps. Kisame chuckled, pleased with the younger's speech. Itachi might not have listened to him, but Naruto did. This boy somehow had a special influence on Uchiha, although not only on him, on all Akatsuki. Thank you, Naruto. Itachi whispered, hugging the younger one tightly. Kisame passed by, stroking the Uchiha's head, making him slightly embarrassed. This has been happening very often lately. After this conversation, everything calmed down for a while, so Kisame, Naruto and Itachi went on another mission. Now they were walking through the forest, when suddenly Itachi stopped. Close your eyes. He ordered, being alert, he felt the approach of about 3 or 5 people. Something in between. A moment later, Sasuke appeared right in front of him, swinging at Itachi Raikiri, but the man managed to dodge. He ordered to close his eyes so that Naruto and Kisame would not get into Sasuke's genjutsu. After another moment, Karen and Yugo appeared next to Naruto, and next to Kisame's Suigetsu. Now I will definitely take your sword, Kisame-san. Shouted Suigetsu, swinging his sword at the senior shinobi. Kisame just rolled his eyes, easily dodging the blow. Naruto also got into a pose to repel the blows or evade them. A familiar chakra. Karen stretched out, looking at Naruto and licking her lips. Yugo was already ready to throw himself at the boy, but did not dare to do it, because Karen was the first to start her game. But Itachi and Sasuke seemed to have disappeared somewhere. In fact, they were not so far from the place where the rest of the shinobi were fighting. Itachi had to put on his cruel brother and killer mask again. You still haven't mastered the Mangekyo Sharingan? Couldn't kill your best friend? You're weak, Sasuke. Sasuke was silent, glaring at Itachi. Everything in him was literally boiling, but outwardly he was calm. You're not the only one who slaughtered the entire clan, Itachi. You said that at the moment to possess Mangekyo Sharingan. You're the one, and who's the other? He asked, pulling his sword out of its scabbard and looking at Itachi, straight into his eyes. It was as if he wasn't afraid to get into his genjutsu. The elder was not going to answer, he stood calmly, putting his hand on the cloak between the buttons, and looked at Sasuke. In an instant, when Itachi blinked, Sasuke was beside him and pierced him with a blade pierced with Chidori. Uchiha Madara. Itachi answered, who, as it turned out, was standing near a tree, but his clone scattered like black crows. He died a long time ago. Sasuke grunted, swinging his blade. After a moment, Itachi twitched due to the fact that his heart was pierced by a blade. And you've grown up, Sasuke. Itachi said. He understood that the younger one had solved his illusion, so he so boldly stabbed the clone in the heart without knowing the continuation about Madara. No. Finally, Itachi gave him a light, dodging the shuriken that flew from the back without any problems. Sasuke only slightly twitched an eyebrow at this, but in general remained cold. Then I'll kill you, and then him. He growled in the end, throwing 2 more shurikens sharply so that Itachi could not dodge. But the shinobi managed to jump between them and immediately grappled with Sasuke in hand-to-hand combat. Aren't you doing the same as me? Destroying the last of the Uchi? Itachi asked, dodging a series of punches. This question unsettled Sasuke, so he got hit pretty hard on the jaw. You bastards who slaughtered our entire clan. I will be idolized by everyone if I kill you. Sasuke growled, striking another blow, from which Itachi was still easily deflected using his eyes. And the father and mother? Did you kill them? The hand didn't waver. This caused Itachi to freeze and lose his vigilance for a while, so Sasuke managed to wound his shoulder with a shuriken. Shut your mouth. It's not for you to talk about it. Itachi found the strength to say it. Sasuke moved a couple of meters away from him, clearly cooking something. And that guy? It's Naruto, right? You picked up this stray mutt. There was such a silence that you could hear Itachi's teeth gritting. Seeing his brother's reaction, Sasuke stretched out in a smile. So you care about him, right? Let me guess, he's my replacement, right? Sasuke abruptly pushed his hand forward, releasing the snakes from it, which pressed Itachi to the wall, forcing him to hit his head. The elder's eyes were starting to hurt, because he used them again quite often. Itachi didn't answer anything, just grabbed his brother's neck with his feet and turned him over, getting out of the pool of snakes and jumping aside. Amaterasu! He shouted, looking at Sasuke, or rather trying to catch him with his eyes. Trees, grass, and everything that fell under the Sharingan were set on fire around. Kisame saw the smoke and became alert. The battle of these 5 was quite fierce. Naruto was already pretty battered, but on the other hand Karen was lying unconscious. It only remained to deal with Yugo. But Kisame still struggled with this liquid type. Naruto, finish with him already and go to Itachi. Kisame shouted at him, once again trying to cut Suigetsu, but nothing came of it again, which made the man growl and completely release Samahata. Good Kisame-san. Naruto replied, starting to strike harder and harder, using multiple shadow cloning and other techniques to defeat Yugo. Using the body substitution technique, the younger Uchiha got rid of Amaterasu and again struck another Raikiri blow, hitting Itachi's shoulder. The elder coughed up blood because of something and spat it on the ground. The battle continued, and heavier techniques using Mangek Sharingan were already used. But at some point he turned out to be useless, because Sasuke was able to dispel his illusion. Itachi was getting worse and worse. The last chance was to use Susanoo, but for the elder it would be suicide. Sasuke folded his hands in the seal and prepared another attack, namely a fireball. Itachi was ready to close, or rather to do the same technique to reflect his brother's technique. The fireballs crossed in a fierce struggle, and gradually Itachi's ball began to weaken, and eventually the arm and part of the body were engulfed in fire, burning the skin. Itachi fell to his knees, coughing again, this time even harder. Weakling! Sasuke said, swinging his blade. Itachi closed his eyes. There was simply no strength left to resist it all. Blood was also flowing from his eyes, and he could hardly see anything. The next moment, drops of blood fall on his face. Itachi shudders, because he does not feel the blade in his heart. Only a blurry picture in front of my eyes, and the brightest thing in it is a shock of yellow hair. The weak one who does not know how to forgive. Naruto growled, his eyes were burning red, his nails became sharper and he looked much more like a fox. Don't you dare open your mouth at my father. Naruto growled as if not with his own voice, creating a Rasengan in his hand and aiming straight at Sasuke's heart. A little more and the younger Uchiha would have fallen dead if he had not had a Sharingan. Here comes the doggy. He snorted, clutching the blade in his hands and looking at Itachi coughing up blood and an angry Naruto in front of him. You'll never whiten those eyes, you jerk. Sasuke said, and in Naruto's head this nonentity was echoed by the hum of the past years. The fangs became even longer, and the body began to be covered with red chakra. This was the first time. Naruto in the next second began to inflict an infinite number of blows on Sasuke, literally a flurry, not giving him a second to catch his breath. One tail began to appear, then almost immediately followed by the second. Itachi watched all this, squeezing his wrist to calm the tremor and tried to somehow intervene. Despite all this, he still loved his younger brother. It hurts so much when two of your loved ones kill each other. Sasuke soon found himself pinned to a rock, and Naruto already had 4 tails. It seemed that the human body had already left him a long time ago. The younger Uchiha did not even know how to evade. Unlike Naruto, he already had almost no chakra. At some point, Naruto swung hard, but stopped his hand, growling and looking into his eyes with his demonic ones. You're a fool and a shallow idiot. He roared, hitting next to Sasuke's head so that the whole rock shattered into shreds, and the opponent fell to the ground. Naruto found the strength to stop this monstrous phenomenon, and when he returned to normal, he grabbed Sasuke by the collar, pulling him to himself. You should have talked to him. Why the hell did you rush at him without knowing anything? Why the hell are you such a cretin and an idiot? The guy growled, hitting Sasuke in the face with his fists and pressing him into the ground. Sasuke only managed to somehow substitute his hands for defense. Kisame saw it all, and not only him. There was such a roar that Yugo, Suigetsu, Karen and Kisame had already gathered at the place of the battle of the two brothers. Karen, as soon as she saw the wounded Sasuke, immediately wanted to rush at Naruto again, but Kisame and Samehada did not stop. Naruto swung again, but suddenly a soft and burnt hand lay on his shoulder. Don't, Naruto. You've done enough already. Itachi could barely stand on his feet, looking at his son. Now he could proudly say that this was so, because Naruto himself called him father. But Itachi-san, Itachi only leaned on him so as not to fall and looked at the beaten Sasuke, hesitating to start for a long time, but soon still finding the strength. I got lost in a lie. I've always lied to you, hoping you'd forgive me. I built a wall between us with my own hands, I just didn't want to drag you into all this. But now I think maybe you could change our parents and our clan. If I had considered you from the very beginning, would have stood in your place and told you the truth. But time will not turn, my words will never reach your heart. And so this time I will say what is really important. And if you can't forgive me, don't. And whatever you decide to do next, know that I will always love you. Having finished this, he coughed and breathed heavily. Itachi-san slaughtered the entire clan to stop the coup. He acted like a real shinobi and was always loyal to you and the clan. I hope you have enough brains to figure it out. Naruto answered, taking Itachi in his arms and leaving with him from there. The elder did not even resist, his strength almost left him. Sasuke got up from the ground and sat down. Karen immediately ran up to him and began to check his condition, but Uchiha did not react in any way, he just kept silent and looked at one point. I'm going back to Konoha, he said, getting up and staggering, starting to somehow walk towards the house that his brother tried so hard to protect, paying a high price for all this. It started to rain, as if he wanted to wash away all the emotions from the people who got under him. Sasuke walked under him stubbornly, not paying attention to the cloak, which was already pretty heavy due to the fact that he was saturated with raindrops, nor to the dirt under his feet, nor to the wounds. He was swaying violently from side to side, but he walked stubbornly, clenching his hands into fists and almost growling. There was a stone under his feet, and the guy stumbled, no longer even trying to put his hands up. But he was caught by the water, or rather by Suigetsu's hands. Have you decided to smash your head, Sasuke? Now Karen will start screaming again. He snorted, sitting on his knees and leaning on Sasuke. The guy guessed right, and Karen immediately ran up to them, starting to examine Sasuke and chirping something in a kind of panic. Only Yugo was standing at a distance. Go away. We're not a team anymore, you can do whatever you want, I'm going to Konoha. Sasuke tried to get up, but Suigetsu only hit him on the head, so much so that Uchiha immediately passed out. What the fuck are you doing? Karen screamed, looking murderously at Suigetsu and grinding her teeth. So he would definitely leave now, you know that he is a stubborn sheep. We'll drag him to the shelter and at least patch him up, and then let him go wherever he wants. Suigetsu answered and stood up, holding Sasuke by the waist and the arm that he threw over his shoulder. Karen just sighed and nodded at it. The four of them went deep into the forest to find a place to sleep. The rain washed away all the blood from Itachi's face and blurred his eyes. The guy was barely breathing, his breathing was hoarse and as if with whistles. Bear with Itachi-san, now. Naruto said, covering him with his cloak and hugging him closer to himself. The guy knew that there was a cave nearby where he could hide. The words of the younger Uchiha did not answer in any way, just closed his eyes a little and coughed again. Kisame was looking for both of them now, staggering in the rain, and grumbling at everything that the light stands on. Naruto finally saw the cave and accelerated, running into it and finally rejoicing that nothing was pouring on him anymore. The guy laid Itachi on the floor and pulled out more or less dry things from the backpack, spreading them out on the floor, then taking off the raincoat from Itachi, shifting it there and covering it with his spare dry raincoat. Itachi-san. Do you hear me? Naruto took his hand, looking at the older one, who was just lying with his eyes closed and breathing heavily. Naruto took a cloth and wiped his face, and then put it on his forehead. The guy sat holding Itachi's hand tightly and then quietly began. You've always been kind to me. You raised me and brought me up. You loved me so much that I never stopped thanking God every day that I have you. You played with me, taught me, always supported and protected me. Now it's my turn to protect you, Itachi-san. He whispered and then pressed Itachi's hand to his cheek, saying softly, I love you, Dad. And I love you, son, he whispered, and a tear rolled down from his right eye. Naruto even forgot how to breathe, he hugged Itachi, hugging him and starting to cry out loud. The elder could only stroke his child's head with trembling fingers, and smile slightly. Kisame finally found them and only went into the cave, wanting to start hitting on both, but he saw the whole picture and heard the crying of the youngest. The man sighed and put his sword at the entrance, then took off his cloak and approached them, sitting down next to them and hugging both. And it's so damp, and you're breeding even more dampness here. He snorted about Naruto's tears, gently stroking Itachi's side. The younger one laughed and smiled so happily through his tears. And I love you, Kisame-san. This made the elder roll his eyes, but then still mutter mutually. Itachi coughed slightly again and then pulled away, lying down in an improvised bed. Kisame got up and went to his backpack, unhooked the mattress from it and spread it out, after that helping Itachi to lie down. I have another one, you will lie on it. And I'll keep an eye on both of you. I told Kisame to the youngest. The guy just nodded and wiped his face, starting to lay out things, and then build a fire. Soon everything was ready, and he lay down, almost immediately passed out. Too many experiences in one day. Kisame got up and adjusted the blanket on both of them, and then fried himself some food on the fire to somehow distract himself. After the meal, the man sat down next to Itachi and hesitated for a couple of minutes, took his hand, starting stroking his palm with his thumb. Itachi opened his eyes listlessly, looking at his friend and smiling slightly. "Don't worry, Kisame. It's all right after all," he said in a hoarse voice, slightly in response, squeezing his partner's hand. He always felt so comfortable and calm next to the elder. "Shut up already," the elder snorted. He always answered a little rudely when he was caught off guard. Itachi knew this perfectly well, for all this time he had already studied his partner inside and out. "Whatever you say." Itachi answered meekly and closed his eyes, falling asleep again. The elder sighed and scolded himself again for being rude to a person to whom he feels a strange attachment. He never loved, and was not loved. He did not know this feeling and did not even try to know and study it. But he felt a strange attachment and emotional closeness to Itachi. It's like a connection from outer space. He just feels comfortable and good next to a person. He doesn't need anything, just to be okay and be around. That's enough for him. And he loves without needing a reciprocal feeling. Kisame pulled his hand a little closer to his lips and gently kissed Itachi's hand, after rubbing his nose against it, and slightly pursing his lips. For some reason he was sure, he knew that it was mutual. He knew that for Itachi he was the same cosmos, the same connection. They are like one whole. Itachi squeezed his hand a little harder, sluggishly opening his eyes and smiling, finally also getting a smile in response, not a grunt. "You know, Aristophanes said that people used to have 4 arms, 4 legs and 2 heads. Someone has 2 female heads, someone has 2 male heads, and someone has a male and a female head. These people loved so much that the gods were angry with them, fearing the strength of their feelings, and divided them in half. Now these people walk the earth and are looking for a mate. Those who had 2 female heads are looking for a woman as a couple, those who have 2 male men, and those who have a male and a female. Here it is clear who they are looking for. But Itachi and Kisame were found. And they don't need anything else. Let it be wrong, disgusting, wrong and terrible for others, but for them it is happiness. Happiness should be quiet. Happiness is for a narrow circle, and not for everyone. Now the 3 of them are a real family. A family of the most dangerous shinobi rank S. But the most loving and willing to stand up for each other. Now and forever.